I don't have an outline for this. I don't have a script for this. I don't have notes for this. We're going completely off the top. Some people read the book of Revelation and they're like, God, I don't know. Some people read it and say, okay, wait, so there's some patterns and sequences of events. Some people have like deeper symbolic knowledge of things, more esoteric knowledge, and they read it and they're like, oh, there's like layers and levels too. There's all this stuff going on, and it seems like it's not that long of a book, but it's a pretty long book. There's a lot of stuff. And then when you get to the end, you're like, wait, okay, so then you got to go back to the beginning and make sure from what you've seen, like try and put context in. And eventually you've read this enough times that you can see pretty much what's going on. So in some ways, it's kind of like a script or an outline or some notes for what is likely a recurring event. And there are general themes and gists. There are a lot of different things going on, but they all kind of tie together. And if you're paying attention to the current ongoing collapse of society and the flushing of civilization into a toilet that's already plugged, culture's going downhill. Everything is I don't even know. Right? And this is in that book. But there's other things too. Certain events that are specifically outlined based on a particular religion and other stuff. And the events that began unfolding on October 7th in the Middle East are all outlined in that story. There's a level and a layer devoted to that. And while there are theories, or you know what, I won't say theory because my last video, there are suppositions and ideas, and in some cases maybe some educated guesses, that the wicked, corrupt, trash bag, dumpster fire people that are pulling the strings, running the governments, deciding on the things, telling the news what to say, meanwhile the rest of us are like, but I disagree. Shut up. Those people that are running that. The idea being that they are simulating the circumstances of the biblical apocalypse, of the events of the Revelation. Which, by the way, if you read into other Gnostic stuff and whatever, that's just one revelation to one apostle. Or a dude named John who was also on that path. But there are many others. There is also revelatory stuff in the Old Testament, upon which, in some cases, it could be argued the New Testament book of Revelation is guided by, based on, or means to close up any loose ends or answer questions from these earlier ones. What I'm getting at is, if you've delved extremely deeply into this story, into this book, into this, whatever it is, prediction, revelation, call it a prophecy or whatever, but it could be very self-fulfilling. In that, it can be inferred as to who set up and started the Armageddon battle, circumstances under which these events take place, what it is that this great awakening, that people awaken to. What they awaken to is this crookedness, dumpster fire, trash bag people pulling the strings. People with no moral authority over them because they are terrible people themselves. Not only that, but things like deceivers, false saviors, people that use the good faith of the masses to justify self-centered or tyrannical or corrupt or flat out evil stuff. That is what people awaken to. What to do about it is not included. If there is a battle in good and evil, that you take sides. But other than that, it doesn't really say much. Makes me question whether it's a control scheme or not at sometimes. Now, obviously, there's something real as well. But who set up and started the Battle of Armageddon is in that story. And I'm not going to say it because I don't want my shit to be told, shut the fuck up, from someone up high on a pyramid. It is unfortunate, but it is a thing that happens, and people are going to go with it. I'm not going to take a side. And the reason for that is I've read the book, and I know who set up and started the fucking thing. So I'm not going to root for the ones attacking the other dudes, but I'm not going to root for the ones that fucking set it up either. They don't represent, I guess you could say, my ancestors. They don't represent a lot of fucking things. But I'm not going to root for the guys on the outliers either. I don't like the situation. I don't like the fact that it's one of those, well, we were here first, well, we were here first. And it's a history of fighting back and forth. And this could just as easily turn into something that's really not. It could just be another repetition, and later on there's another repetition. But right now, the point that everything else globally is doing, whether this is a setup by the top of the pyramid trash bag people or not, whether this is a real thing that just happens repeatedly, the Strauss-Ob, however the fuck it's pronounced, cyclical theory of wars, right? The generational theory, that's what they call it. The fourth turning, right? I haven't read this. I've read the Revelation. It includes the same. The revelation is that these turnings occur with regularity. And you get this 1,000-year reign of Jesus, of Christ, that it's said to be great. Things are hunky-dunk, right? But then after that is a 10,000-year reign of Satan. Now, if you look at it all together, it's an 11,000-year cycle. And you got to remember that everything to do with the sun goes in 11s. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, try and take heart. Remember the very last line of the book of Revelation is, may the peace of Christ be with you always. And it's kind of a stay frosty thing, because it's like, yeah, that shit's going to happen. No, there's nothing you can do to avert it. You must only do what you can do, which is your role in it. But here's the script, or the outline, or the notes, or whatever, right? Here's the heads up. But you got to remember, the peace of Christ includes trying to keep your head while nailed to a fucking cross to die. So, sure, I wish that. Peace of Christ be with you. Keep a cool head. Stay frosty no matter what. But read that book repeatedly until you start to see the other patterns emerge, and you'll start to understand the circumstances, the setup, all of it. A battle at Armageddon at this time, or over it, right? Over the whole matter of that area, drags in other hilltop kings and other hilltops. And there are 3. Right now we got 3 major superpowers, and we got some of these other things, but then these superpowers could all get involved in what's going on in the Middle East. One side attacking another side, it's another proxy front, right? Curiously, the 2 countries engaged in the direct proxy issue right now have some core questions, concerns, or conflicts to do with Judaism. And this is not some anti-Semitic nothing, okay? It's not like that. Remember when I mentioned ancestors, okay? So what I'm talking about is the issue with Ukraine is that the military and a major political faction in their country that is in charge of it right now, other than the president, are basically literal Nazis from back in the day that never really stopped. There's issues with that culture. And that's a Man of the East situation where you got this other dude that's running it. He himself is Jewish. But there's a lot of stuff going on there that is ungodly, that is unholy, right? And then at the same time, you've got the government running the nation or the state of Israel. You've got all the people with the questions about validity, constitutionality, declaration versus a constitution, and all of this stuff. I am familiar with the things that people say. I have looked into those things to a little bit of a degree, to just out of curiosity, what are they talking about? And it's like, the sources are always questionable. And I'm not saying that there must be a nation in that place. It must be run by Jewish people, and it must be called Israel. I'm not 100% behind that either. It doesn't make me anti-Semitic. It just makes me on the fence. But the thing is, the people running that country right now are under investigation for corruption, and we have no freaking clue whether it's falsely accusing for political means or whether it's legitimate. I would not be surprised if it's legitimate, because the person being having been accused of this that is running the country is basically one of the big three long-time, overtime. They have this recycling 3 dudes that were president, and one of them died. I think the other one died. This is the only of the 3 that's still around. So I got to question the legitimacy, right? Like with the rest of the system, when it's obviously selections and political puppets and a uniparty and stuff like that. Other countries have that too. So my concern is that you have basically a neoliberal, neocon type establishment, uniparty person running another country that has a very contentious history, and there is a lot of debate and division over, and I'm not saying they are being divisive, I'm just saying there is division over a lot to do with this, right? And questions as to whether a lot of people are saying that it looks like they have either allowed a thing to happen to give them an excuse, or were somewhat behind it. Kind of like people talk about September 11th. So, like I said, read the book of Revelation enough times to know who set up and caused the battle. And understand that there are things that people will say outwardly in the social media spheres and everything else. They will say, to have a certain opinion is automatically anti-Semitic. To use a certain phrase or turn of words is automatically anti-Semitic. But it occurs within the revelation, and it is not an anti-Semitic statement. It is simply a mention of who started the battle that ends all wars. And not in a good way. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to my really vague TED Talk. May the peace of Christ be with you always.